The rain had started hours before the evening rush, washing the city in silver and gray. Inside the cozy glow of Harper's Cafe, the low hum of jazz mingled with the clinking of cups and the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans. People came and went, couples laughing softly, friends sharing pastries, strangers wrapped in their own worlds. But in the far corner, near the window streaked with rain, sat a man who looked like he'd been waiting too long. His name was Daniel. He adjusted the cuffs of his navy blue blazer and glanced at the small silver watch on his wrist for what felt like the 100th time. The minute hand seemed to move slower with each passing breath. In front of him sat 2 coffee cups, one untouched, the other now half empty. Between them lay a single rose, wrapped in clear plastic, beads of water still clinging to its petals. He smiled faintly at the sight of it, though his eyes betrayed a quiet disappointment. This blind date was supposed to be different. After years of trying to move on from a love that ended too soon, his sister had convinced him to give this one chance a try. She's kind, funny, and honest, she'd promised. Someone who deserves to be met halfway. Daniel had believed her. He'd shaved, ironed his shirt twice, and even rehearsed polite conversation topics in the mirror that morning. But now, as the clock neared 8, it was becoming painfully clear, he was alone again. The waitress, a young woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile, approached softly. "Would you like to order something else, sir? Maybe a refill?" Daniel shook his head, forcing a polite smile. "No, thank you, I'll wait a little longer." She nodded with understanding, her expression kind but pitying. She'd seen this before, people waiting for someone who would never come. Outside, the rain thickened, drumming softly against the glass. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching the world blur beyond the window. He wondered what kind of woman would agree to a blind date and then not show up. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe something came up, or maybe fate was simply playing one of its cruel jokes again. He sighed and took a slow sip from his lukewarm coffee. The taste was bitter now, just like the feeling settling in his chest. He'd promised himself not to expect too much, not to hope too hard, but somehow, hope had still crept in. As the cafe grew busier, laughter and conversation surrounded him, making his empty table feel even lonelier. He checked his phone again. No messages, no calls, just silence. He was just about to ask for the check when something unexpected happened. The little bell above the cafe door jingled, and a small figure stepped inside. A little girl, no older than 6, wearing a yellow raincoat and holding a tiny pink purse, stood at the entrance. Her hair was damp and curly, her eyes wide and curious as they scanned the room. She looked too young to be there alone. The waitress noticed her too, about to step forward, but before she could, the little girl smiled and began walking straight toward Daniel's table, her tiny boots tapping against the floor. Daniel blinked in surprise as she stopped right in front of him, clutching the strap of her purse tightly. She tilted her head and said in the sweetest, most innocent voice, "Are you Daniel?" He nodded, completely taken aback. Yes, I am." The little girl's smile widened. "Good. My mommy's sorry she's late." And before Daniel could even find his voice, she climbed onto the chair across from him, the very one meant for his blind date. Daniel sat frozen for a moment, staring at the small girl now seated across from him. She swung her little legs back and forth under the table, humming softly as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Her raincoat dripped tiny puddles onto the floor, and her cheeks glowed pink from the cold outside. He cleared his throat, unsure how to begin. "So, your mommy sent you here?" The girl nodded, her curls bouncing. She said to tell you she's sorry she's late and that you shouldn't go away. She said she'll be here soon." She smiled proudly, clearly pleased that she'd remembered her message. Daniel blinked, torn between confusion and amusement. This was definitely not how blind dates were supposed to start. "Well," he said gently, "that's very kind of you to deliver the message." "What's your name?" "Lily," she said with a little grin. "And you're Daniel. Mommy showed me your picture this morning. You looked taller in it." He chuckled despite himself. People say that about photos sometimes. The waitress approached again, her eyebrows raised slightly in surprise when she saw the girl. "Oh, hello, sweetheart. Would you like something to drink?" "Hot chocolate, please," Lily said, raising her hand like she was in class. Daniel couldn't help smiling as the waitress jotted it down and walked away. The whole situation felt surreal, yet oddly comforting. The awkward tension of being stood up had vanished, replaced by this tiny whirlwind of honesty and joy sitting across from him. "So," he said after a pause, "did your mommy tell you anything else about tonight?" Lily nodded eagerly. "She said she was nervous. She doesn't go out much, you know. She works a lot, and she said this was her first date in forever." Daniel's heart softened. He looked at the small rose still lying between them. "Well, tell her she doesn't have to be nervous. I'm not scary." Lily giggled, covering her mouth. "I know. Mommy said you look nice. And you like dogs." He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "She told you that?" "Uh-huh. She said people who like dogs have kind hearts." He smiled, unable to hide how those words touched him. There was something about this little girl, her confidence, her sincerity, that reminded him what innocence looked like. The waitress returned with Lily's hot chocolate, complete with a swirl of cream and tiny marshmallows. Lily gasped as if she'd just been handed a treasure. "Wow, thank you, mister," she said to Daniel, assuming he'd paid for it. "You're very welcome," he replied, watching her take her first careful sip. For the next few minutes, they talked about everything from her favorite cartoons to her pet goldfish named Sparkle. She spoke with the kind of imagination only a child could have, and Daniel found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Time slipped away quietly, like rain on glass. The cafe lights glowed warmer now, the storm outside beginning to fade. Daniel almost forgot he was waiting for someone, until Lily glanced at the clock and frowned. "She's taking too long," she murmured softly, tracing her finger on the cup's rim. "Mommy said she'd be here soon." Daniel's chest tightened at the worry in her voice. "Hey," he said gently, leaning forward. "I'm sure she's okay. Maybe she got caught in traffic or the rain. She'll be here soon." Lily nodded slowly, trying to believe him. Her little fingers fidgeted with the edge of her coat, her earlier cheer dimming slightly. Then, as if sensing his concern, she smiled again. "You're nice, Mr. Daniel. I think Mommy will like you." Daniel's heart gave a strange, unexpected flutter. He didn't know this woman, hadn't even seen her yet, but something about her daughter already felt like a small miracle he hadn't been expecting. Outside, the rain finally began to ease, and somewhere in the distance, a doorbell chimed as someone new entered the cafe. The bell above the cafe door jingled again, but it wasn't Lily's mother. Just another couple, rushing in from the rain, shaking their umbrellas and laughing. Daniel's eyes drifted toward the door for a moment before returning to the little girl, who was now drawing shapes with her finger in the fog on the window. He couldn't help but smile. There was a gentleness about her that made the entire cafe seem softer, warmer. The tension that had filled his chest earlier was gone, replaced by a calm curiosity he hadn't felt in years. "So, Lily," he said, leaning forward, "what else did your mommy tell you about me?" She scrunched her nose, thinking hard. She said you work with cars. And that you fixed your dad's old one even when everyone said it couldn't run anymore." Daniel raised his eyebrows, surprised. "That's true. How did she know that?" "She said you told her sister that story," Lily said, sipping her hot chocolate. "She said that's how she knew you don't give up easily." Daniel smiled faintly, realizing now that his blind date wasn't a stranger at all. She must have known his sister. "Your mommy sounds very smart," he said. "She is," Lily said proudly, eyes lighting up. "She reads a lot, and she makes the best pancakes in the world." "Pancakes, huh?" Daniel chuckled. "I might have to test that someday." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? You can come for breakfast. Mommy won't mind." Daniel laughed softly. "Maybe one day." There was a pause, a quiet, comfortable silence, before Lily tilted her head and asked, "Do you have kids, Mr. Daniel?" He hesitated, the question catching him off guard. "No," he said finally, his voice gentle. "Not yet. Do you want some?" she asked with childlike bluntness. He smiled sadly. "Maybe. Someday. I always thought I'd have a little girl, actually. Someone curious and brave. Kind of like you." Lily grinned, clearly pleased. "Then maybe you're just practicing today." Daniel couldn't help laughing. "You might be right." Their laughter blended with the soft music playing in the cafe. Around them, people came and went, but Daniel barely noticed. Time had taken on a strange rhythm, slow and warm. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. After a few more minutes, Lily reached into her tiny pink purse and pulled out a folded drawing. "I made this for Mommy," she said, showing him a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures, 2 big, 1 small, standing under a sun. "See, that's me, and Mommy, and," she paused. "I didn't know what you looked like, so I left your face blank." Daniel's throat tightened. "My face." She nodded earnestly. "Mommy said maybe, if the date goes well, she'll fill it in." Something inside him shifted at those words. For the first time that night, he felt hope stir again, not the fragile kind that fades when plans change, but the quiet kind that grows when something feels meant to be. He looked at the drawing again and smiled softly. "It's beautiful, Lily," she beamed. "You can help me color it when Mommy gets here." Daniel nodded, though his eyes lingered on the door once more. Whoever this woman was, she had raised someone extraordinary. And without even being there, she'd already made him feel something real, something that had been missing from his life for far too long. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, reflecting like tiny stars. And just as Daniel was about to ask Lily another question, the bell above the door jingled once more, this time, with a sense of something different. Lily's eyes lit up instantly. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. Daniel turned toward the door, and saw her. The cafe door swung open, and a gust of cool night air swept in, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and jasmine. Daniel turned toward the sound, and his heart gave a quiet, startled jolt. A young woman stood in the doorway, her chest rising and falling as if she'd been running. Her dark hair, damp from the rain, clung gently to her cheeks, and her coat was half buttoned. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Daniel off guard, it was her eyes. They were soft, wide, and familiar. "Mommy," Lily cried, waving from the corner. The woman's tense expression melted the moment she saw her daughter. She hurried across the cafe, kneeling beside Lily's chair, her voice trembling with relief. "Oh, sweetheart, I told you to wait by the front." "You scared me," Lily giggled. "I found Mr. Daniel. He was waiting all alone, so I kept him company." The woman's eyes flickered toward him then, hesitant, apologetic. For a moment, she just looked at him, unsure what to say. Daniel rose from his chair, smiling softly. "You must be her mom." She nodded quickly, brushing a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Daniel. I lost my phone in the cab and couldn't call." Then the traffic lights went out near Fifth Avenue. It was a mess. She laughed nervously, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. And somehow, Lily decided she could handle introductions on her own. Daniel chuckled gently. "It's all right. I think she did an excellent job." The woman blinked, surprised at his kindness. "You're not upset?" "Not at all," he said. "Honestly, she's been the best company I've had in a long time." Lily beamed proudly, sipping the last of her hot chocolate as if she'd accomplished something heroic. The woman finally exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. "Well, I'm grateful for your patience. I was afraid I ruined everything before it even began." Daniel shook his head. If anything, it made tonight unforgettable. For the first time, she smiled, a real smile, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. A quiet sense that maybe their meeting wasn't random at all. They sat down, the three of them. Lily talked excitedly about the drawing she'd made, showing it off to her mother. "See, Mommy, that's you and me and Mr. Daniel. You can finish it now." Her mother laughed softly, but her eyes flickered with something deeper, perhaps a glimmer of hope she didn't want to admit. "So," Daniel began, looking across the table, "your daughter tells me you make the best pancakes in the world." She smirked. "She's my biggest fan. You'll have to try them someday to see if she's telling the truth." "I just might," he said, and his tone carried a warmth that made her cheeks flush again. For a while, the three of them sat together, sharing stories and laughter that filled the corners of the cafe. The tension that had existed at the start of the evening dissolved into something softer, something that felt almost like belonging. And as the clock neared 9, Daniel realized something extraordinary. The date he thought had fallen apart had somehow become one of the most meaningful moments of his life. He watched Lily resting her head against her mother's arm, her eyes growing heavy. The little girl had unknowingly built a bridge between two lonely souls. When they finally stood to leave, Lily gave Daniel a sleepy hug. "Good night, Mr. Daniel. Don't forget about breakfast." Daniel smiled, his heart full. "I won't, promise." Her mother met his gaze one last time before stepping out into the night. The rain had stopped, but the world still shimmered like it had been washed clean. And as the cafe door closed behind them, Daniel found himself smiling, not because the evening had gone perfectly, but because it had gone honestly. The night had deepened, the rain long gone, leaving the city wrapped in silver reflections. Daniel lingered in the cafe even after Lily and her mother left. The empty chair across from him no longer felt lonely, it felt alive, filled with the echoes of laughter, soft voices, and a spark of something new. He sat there for a moment longer, quietly smiling to himself, then finally stood to leave. Outside, the streets glowed under the lamplight. The rain had washed away the dust, and the air smelled of new beginnings. As Daniel walked toward the parking lot, he heard someone calling his name. "Daniel, wait." He turned, and there she was, Lily's mother, running up the sidewalk, slightly out of breath, clutching a folded umbrella in her hand. He smiled. "You forgot something." She shook her head, catching her breath. "No, I just didn't want to leave like that." Daniel's heart softened. "I'm glad you didn't." She hesitated for a moment, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I was nervous about tonight. It's been years since I've tried something like this. I almost canceled, actually." "Why didn't you?" he asked. She looked up at him, her eyes gentle. "Because Lily begged me not to," she said. "Maybe this time would be different." Daniel chuckled softly. "She's a smart kid. She really is," the woman said, smiling. "And after seeing how kind you were to her, I think she might be right." For a moment, they stood there in the soft glow of the streetlights, two people who had spent too long walking alone, suddenly finding someone who made the silence feel safe again. "I should thank her," Daniel said. "She's the best matchmaker I've ever met." The woman laughed quietly. "She'll be thrilled to hear that." Then, more softly, "Would you, maybe like to see her again?" "Us, I mean." Daniel didn't hesitate. "I'd love that." A breeze drifted between them, carrying the faint scent of rain and roses. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the rose that had been sitting on the table all evening, still fresh, still waiting. He offered it to her. "For you," he said simply. She looked at it, then at him, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, Daniel." Their hands brushed for a moment, just long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that comes from both relief and hope. As they parted ways, Daniel felt lighter than he had in years. The night no longer felt empty. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something worth waiting for. Days turned into weeks, and true to her word, she called. Breakfasts turned into long walks in the park, laughter over pancakes, and movie nights with Lily snuggled between them. What had begun as a failed blind date slowly bloomed into something real, something built not on perfection, but on honesty, warmth, and second chances. And sometimes, when Lily would tug at his hand and say, "You know, Mr. Daniel, Mommy smiles more now," he would simply smile back and whisper, "That's because of you." Because in the end, it wasn't the blind date that changed everything, it was the little girl with the yellow raincoat and a heart big enough to bring two lost souls together.